At the Christmas dinner, my brother raised his glass and said, "Cheers to the González family except for Tony, the family failure, whose only asset is money." My parents laughed while nodding, then I raised my glass and said, "To the failure who will stop paying their bills," and they laughed, unaware that in a few days they would be evicted. It was Christmas Eve, and my parents' house was as it always was. Twinkling lights, a tree covered in shiny ornaments, and that nativity scene we'd been using since I was a child. The smell of turkey, mashed potatoes, and punch filled the air, but there was something else too, that unspoken family tension that no one voiced but everyone felt. The González family was expert at pretending everything was fine, even though inside things were always on the verge of exploding. And that night they did. At the table were the usual faces. Dad, in his checkered shirt with a belly that kept growing, carved the turkey as if he were the chief of a tribe. Mom, wearing her red apron with her hair tied back, served the food while dropping hints about who hadn't helped in the kitchen. My uncles and cousins chatted about trivial things, soccer, the cold. Then there was Raul, my older brother, the king of the family according to everyone. There he sat, with his winner's smile, his girlfriend Carla, a gorgeous woman who looked like a model, and his two perfect kids who said thank you without being prompted. And then there was me, Tony. The failure? That's what they called me for as long as I could remember, not because I lacked money or success. On the contrary, I was the one with the cash. My auto parts business didn't make me a millionaire, but it was enough for my apartment, my car, and a stack of extra bills. The problem? I had no girlfriend, no wife, no friends, no social life. I spent my days working, waking up at 6 a.m. and going to bed at midnight, checking numbers, delivering orders, growing what I'd built with my own hands. To them, that was worth nothing. Poor Tony, they'd say, so alone, so boring. Meanwhile, Raul was the hero, always partying with a girlfriend on his arm, a ton of friends, and a life everyone applauded. That he didn't work? It didn't matter. That he didn't have a penny to his name? No big deal. Because I was there to support them all. Yes, that's how it was. I paid for everything. When Mom said the washing machine broke, who pulled out his wallet? Tony. When Dad wanted to paint the house or fix the roof, who provided the money? Tony. And Raul, the great Raul, always had an excuse. I spent it on a night out with the guys. Carla needed a new dress. The kids have swimming lessons. And I, like an idiot, paid. Their house mortgage, the kids' school fees, even the vacations they took every year. My parents were no better. They lived off what I sent them each month because, according to them, their pension wasn't enough. Meanwhile, Raul strutted around like the perfect son, and I was the fool who didn't know how to live. That night, dinner went on as usual. Everyone ate, laughed, and passed the plates. Until Raul decided it was his moment to shine. He raised his glass of wine I'd paid for, by the way, and tapped it with a knife to hush everyone. "A toast," he said in that actor's voice he used when he wanted to impress. "To the González family, the best in the world. Cheers to everyone except Tony, the failure whose only asset is money." The table erupted in laughter. Dad let out a guffaw so loud he nearly spat out his turkey. Mom nodded, wiping a tear as if it were the funniest thing she'd ever heard. My uncles laughed out of obligation, and Carla smiled with that, "I'm not getting involved but I'm still amused" look. Raul shot me that familiar mix of pity and superiority. "See, Tony? That's why no one likes you. Working all day, no girlfriend, no friends. How sad." And they all laughed again. I felt a knot in my stomach, but it wasn't sadness. It was fury, a fury that had been building for years, fueled by every remark, every "poor Tony," every time they used me as their personal bank and then treated me like I was nothing. I looked at my glass of soda, since I don't even drink alcohol, another thing they loved to mock, and raised it slowly. They all quieted, expecting me to add to the joke. "To the failure," I said calmly, almost smiling. "The one who'll stop paying their bills." The table burst into laughter again. "Oh, Tony, what a funny idea," Mom said, patting my shoulder. Dad nodded, chuckling. "That's my son, always with his little jokes." Raoul raised an eyebrow as if thinking, poor idiot can't even respond properly. But it wasn't a joke. They didn't know it, but I did. In my head it was all clear. I'd been mulling it over for months, and Raoul's toast was the last straw. Because the failure had something they didn't: control. Control over the money that kept them afloat. And in a few days they'd learn it the hard way. Dinner went on as if nothing had happened. They talked about the cold, how Raoul and Carla were taking the kids to see Santa, how expensive the supermarket was. I smiled, ate my turkey, and nodded when needed. But inside I was counting the hours. While they planned their Christmas shopping with the money they expected from me, I was planning something bigger: the day the González family would lose their ATM. And it wouldn't be pretty. When I said goodbye that night and got into my car, I glanced at the house in the rearview mirror. The light still glowed, and from the outside, everything looked perfect. But inside, things were already falling apart. And I was going to be the one to finish tearing them down. I got to my building, pulled out my phone, and checked the calendar. It was December 25th, early morning. In 5 days, on the 30th, Raoul's next mortgage payment was due. My parents would also expect their monthly deposit on January 1st, like clockwork. They always texted me on the 28th or 29th, with that mix of victimhood and sweetness. Son, can you help us this month? You know the pension isn't enough. And Raoul? He didn't even bother asking directly. He just let Carla call me in her soft voice. Tony, we're a bit tight, can you lend a hand? But this time there'd be nothing. Not a cent. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment choice. I'd been thinking about it for months, though that night at dinner gave me the final push. Every time I transferred money to their accounts, it felt like they were taking a piece of me, not just the cash but my respect. They lived their perfect lives: parties, trips, new clothes, while I worked like a mule and got mocked for not having a girlfriend or friends. For what? So Raoul could flaunt his nice house and kids in fancy schools, all paid for by the failure. So my parents could complain about how tough life was on a tight budget, while I covered their water, electricity, and even their Netflix subscription for their shows. That I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. There it all was: my savings, the money from my business, the transactions from recent months. Then I looked at the automatic transfers I'd set up, one for Raoul, one for my parents. I canceled them with a click. It was so easy it almost made me laugh. 2 buttons and it was done. The money flow that kept them afloat stopped, like I'd turned off a faucet. I felt no guilt, no fear, just an odd calm, like when you finish a grueling task and realize you don't have to carry it anymore. That I spent the rest of the early morning planning. I wouldn't tell them yet. I wanted them to figure it out themselves, to feel the shock when the bank sent an insufficient funds notice or when Raoul's landlord showed up with a scowl. I knew they'd come running to me with tears or yells, but this time I wouldn't budge. I'd decided something bigger. I wasn't just going to stop paying them, I was going to cut them out of my life. If they loved mocking the failure so much, let's see how they'd manage without him. The next morning, December 26th, I woke up early as usual, made coffee, and got to work. The business didn't stop, not even for Christmas. There were orders to review, clients to call, parts to ship. While answering emails, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. Son, dinner was lovely last night, wasn't it? Raoul's a wild one with his antics, but we love you so much. I smiled but didn't reply. It was her usual smoothing over text, as if "we love you" could erase years of disdain. An hour later, Carla messaged, "Tony, can we see you soon? The kids miss you and Raoul says you're the best uncle." Sure, the best uncle with a wallet, I thought. I didn't respond to either. I went on with my day, working and organizing as if nothing was wrong. But deep down, I knew the clock was ticking. The 30th was coming fast, and with it, the first blow. Raoul's mortgage wouldn't be paid. The bank might give them a couple of days grace, maybe until January 2nd or 3rd, but then the letters, calls, and eventually the eviction notice would come if they didn't find the money. And my parents? When they saw no deposit on January 1st, they'd panic. I could picture Mom crying on the phone and Dad yelling about how I could do this after all they'd done for me. But I was ready. For the first time in years, I felt free. No girlfriend, no friends, no parties, but I had something they didn't: control over my life. And soon, very soon, they'd realize the failure wasn't as useless as they thought. The days after Christmas flew by, as they do when you're waiting for something big. On the 26th and 27th, I worked non-stop, emails, shipments, keeping the business on track. On December 28th, the tone shifted. Dad texted, direct as always, "Son, when are you sending this month's money? You know the first is a holiday and banks get weird around these dates." I didn't reply. An hour later, Mom called. I didn't pick up, but she left a voicemail. "Tony, are you okay? We haven't heard from you, son. Call us when you can, okay?" Her voice had that mix of worry and sweetness she used to guilt me. This time it didn't work. I turned off my phone and kept working on a big order that came in that morning. On the 29th, things got serious. Raul texted, "Hey, what's up with you? Carla says you're not answering and Mom's worried. Did you make this month's transfer or what?" There it was, the first hint something was off. The mortgage was due the next day, and he knew I always paid early to avoid issues. I didn't reply. Instead, I pictured his face, that mix of confusion and anger he got when things didn't go his way. He was probably at home with Carla and the kids in the yard, thinking I was the same old Tony who'd rushed to fix their lives. The 30th hit like a speeding train. I woke up early, made coffee, and checked my bank account. Everything was fine. Savings intact, business humming, not a cent transferred. I sat on the couch with my laptop and waited. It didn't take long. At 9 a.m. my phone went crazy, Raul calling. I didn't answer. He called 3 times in a row, then texted, "Tony, pick up, this isn't a joke. The bank sent a notice saying the payment didn't go through. What's happening?" 10 minutes later, Carla called. Her voicemail was less sweet this time. "Tony, please call us. This is serious. The bank says they'll cut everything tomorrow if we don't pay." I did nothing. I sat there, sipping coffee, watching their world start to crumble. By noon, Mom and Dad joined the chaos. Mom called, sobbing, "Son, what's wrong? Why aren't you answering? We need the money for the month. Please don't do this." Dad was harsher. "Tony, this isn't a game. Call us now or I'm coming to your place." On the 31st, New Year's Eve, it all blew up. I thought they'd spend the day scrambling for solutions, calling friends or the bank, but I was wrong. Around 3 p.m., while I was checking invoices in the living room, someone rang the doorbell like they wanted to break it. I peeked out the window. Raul, Carla, my parents, even the kids, all crowded at my building's entrance. Raul's face was red, like he'd been yelling the whole way. Dad was pounding the door with his fist. Mom stood back, arms crossed. Carla held the youngest while the other ran around. I opened the door. There was no avoiding it. As soon as I stepped out, Raul was on me. "What's wrong with you, Tony? Are you crazy? The bank's calling, saying they'll take the house tomorrow if I don't pay," he shouted, so close I could smell the coffee he'd probably downed to calm down. Dad jumped in. "Explain yourself, damn it. Why didn't you send the money? We depend on you." Mom sobbed in the background. "Son, how can you do this? What did we do to you?" While Carla stared at me like I was a monster. I stayed calm. "I'm not paying any more," I said, crossing my arms. "It's over." Raul froze for a second like he couldn't process it. Then he erupted, "What do you mean it's over? I have kids, Tony. A family. You can't do this over a stupid dinner joke." Dad stepped forward, jabbing a finger at me. "You're selfish, that's what you are. After all we've done for you, you're leaving us on the street?" That's when I lost it. "All you've done for me? What? Mock me for not having a girlfriend? Live off my money while Raul blows it on parties? I support all of you and you call me a failure?" I yelled, not caring who heard. Neighbors peeked out their windows, but I didn't care. Raul grabbed my arm. I shook him off. "Don't touch me. If you're so worried about your house, get a job." I turned to my parents. And you, stop expecting me to fix your lives. Mom cried harder. Carla screamed I was heartless. How could I do this to the kids? The little ones watched from the stairs, scared, and for a moment I felt a pang of doubt. But then I remembered the dinner laughter, the cheers to Tony, the failure, and it passed. Get out, I said, pointing to the street. There's nothing for you here. Raul glared at me with pure hatred like he wanted to hit me, but Dad held him back. This isn't over, Tony, he said, voice shaking with rage. You'll regret this. They turned and left. Mom crying, Raul cursing, Carla carrying the kids like it was a funeral. I shut the door and stood in silence. Outside, New Year's Eve fireworks started, but my mind was a whirlwind. I knew they weren't done, that they'd try again. But I also knew the failure wouldn't give in. January 1st was hours away, and with it, the real blow. Unpaid bills, locked doors, a lesson they'd never forget. That night, while the world celebrated with fireworks and toasts, I stayed in my apartment. I opened a soda, put on an old movie, and relaxed. I didn't need parties or friends to feel good. For the first time in years, I felt in control. And I knew that on January 1st, when the bank closed their accounts for non-payment, things would get even more interesting. January 1st dawned quiet in my apartment, but I knew it wouldn't be for them. I got up early, made coffee, and sat with my laptop. No new messages on my phone, which surprised me after yesterday's drama. Maybe they were exhausted from yelling, or finally looking for their own way out. But I wasn't letting my guard down. The bank doesn't wait, and overdue deadlines don't fix themselves. Around 9, I checked my account again. Everything was the same. Savings intact, business thriving, transfers canceled. I imagined Raul's house. The bank had likely sent the final notice. Payment not received. Next step, foreclosure. He'd be on the phone, arguing with some helpless employee. Carla would be beside him with that worried look she got when things spun out of control. The kids, poor things, probably confused, asking why Mom and Dad were so tense. At my parents' place, it'd be similar. Without the January deposit, they couldn't pay for electricity, water, or food. Mom would be counting the few bills left in her purse. Dad pacing, muttering this couldn't be happening. They'd always lived day to day, trusting I'd swoop in with cash just in time. But this time, the failure wasn't there to save them. January 10th hit like a hammer. I woke up early, stomach churning, not from fear but an energy I couldn't explain. I knew what was happening. Raul and his family were getting evicted. After days of pleas, silence, and empty promises, the bank wouldn't wait longer. And I wouldn't miss it. Not to gloat, well, maybe a little, but to see it, feel it, confirm it was real. I left my apartment at 8 a.m., wearing a cap and old jacket to blend in. I drove to Raul's neighborhood, parking a few blocks from that big, beautiful house I'd helped pay for over the years, near a park where I could watch unnoticed. The bank truck was there, 2 suited men with papers. A couple of bored cops stood by. Neighbors gathered, whispering. At 89 sharp, the door opened. Raul emerged first, in jeans and a wrinkled shirt, not the polished guy who bragged at parties. He carried a messy box, kids' toys, a photo frame, loose cables. Carla followed, red-eyed, hair a mess, holding the youngest while the older one ran beside her, crying. I don't want to leave, Mommy, the little one screamed, his voice stabbing me like a knife. But I didn't move. A bank guy approached Raul with a paper. Sign here, he said, cold as ice. Raul glared like he'd rip his head off, but scribbled so hard he nearly tore it. This is bullshit, he muttered, tossing it down. Carla grabbed it, whispering, but he shook her off and yelled, This is all Tony's fault. That damn selfish bastard. Neighbors glanced around, some nodding like they understood. Then real chaos broke out. The truck crew hauled out furniture. The sofa Raul watched soccer on, the table for Carla's fancy dinners, the huge TV I'd paid off in installments. Each piece was another blow. Raul tried to stop them. That's mine, don't touch it. But a cop pushed him back. Calm down, sir, or you're under arrest, he said. Raul stood still, shaking with rage. Carla sat on the curb, kids clinging to her, all three sobbing as neighbors snapped photos. Suddenly an old car pulled up, my parents. Mom ran out with a plastic bag, yelling, "Raul, son, what's happening?" Dad got out slower, pale, shoulders slumped like the hospital had drained him. Seeing Raul, Mom cried harder, hugging him as he stared at the furniture. "Tony," Raul shouted, pointing at nothing. "He did this. The failure left us on the street." Dad scanned the crowd. For a second I thought he saw me. I ducked lower behind the tree, holding my breath. Then something unexpected happened. Carla stood still, holding the kid, and marched to Raul. "Stop blaming Tony," she screamed with a fury I'd never heard. "You never worked, never saved, always waiting for him to bail us out. This is on you too." Raul spun, red with anger, raising a hand like he'd hit her. Cops grabbed him fast as he struggled. "Let me go, damn it," he yelled, but they pinned him to the truck. Mom covered her face, sobbing. Dad just stared, strength gone. I left before they spotted me. Hands shaking, I drove a few blocks and stopped in an empty lot. Alone, I let it all out. Not tears, but something bigger. Anger, sadness, satisfaction, all mixed. I pounded the steering wheel till my hand hurt, yelling, "They deserved it." Then I went quiet, breathing hard, staring at nothing. The failure had won, but it didn't feel like a win. It felt like a fire that burned everything, including me. Update 1. Hi everyone, thanks for the comments and support since I shared the Christmas dinner story and how I stopped funding my family. It's been a few weeks since Raul's eviction, and I wanted to give a quick update on how it all ended. This chapter's finally closed. After losing the house, Raul, Carla, and the kids had to move in with my parents. Their place is tiny, just 2 small rooms and a barely working bathroom. Since they haven't paid bills, there's no electricity or water, so they're crammed in without comforts. My parents, who always let Raul be the spoiled do-nothing, finally had enough and forced him to work. Now he's a construction worker. Never thought I'd see that. Dad stepped up too, trimming bushes around the neighborhood for cash, something he hadn't done in years while I footed the bill. Meh, I'm better than ever. The auto parts business is growing, I've got peace and no more messages or begging from them. Being their ATM is done. So that's it, they're in their little house, no luxuries, finally working, and I'm free of it all. The failure came out on top and it feels great. Thanks.